In 1986, a jet engine didn't just roar across a movie screen, it tore straight through American culture. Top Gun arrived at a moment when the country was still negotiating its confidence, still carrying the long shadow of Vietnam, still unsure how to feel about uniforms and authority. Then, suddenly, naval aviators weren't distant figures on the evening news. They were sunlit, reckless, magnetic. The film didn't politely introduce itself. It accelerated. Steel met sky. Rivalry met ego. Romance met risk. And audiences over 30 felt something shift in real time. This wasn't just spectacle. It was rebranding, myth-making, and emotional engineering disguised as popcorn entertainment. Because behind every slow-motion salute and every afterburner blaze was a calculated decision that changed perception forever. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. The real story of Top Gun isn't in the sky, it's in the choices that built it. 1. A real pilot died, capturing the film's most terrifying moment. The most haunting truth behind Top Gun isn't fictional, it's permanent. Legendary aerobatic pilot Art Scholl was hired to capture the flat spin sequence that would later become the catastrophic moment for Maverick and Goose. Cameras mounted, aircraft prepped, conditions clear. He entered the spin deliberately. At 3,000 feet, he radioed that something was wrong. At 1,500 feet, his voice tightened. Moments later, his plane hit the Pacific. The footage was never recovered. The cause was never definitively explained. The film quietly dedicates itself to him, but few viewers understood the weight behind that credit. That tragic loss casts a shadow over every rewatch. It reminds us the danger on screen wasn't manufactured, it was respected. And from the very beginning, Top Gun was playing with stakes far higher than popcorn entertainment. 2. The Navy didn't just cooperate, it invested. This wasn't a movie borrowing jets, it was a partnership. The production paid millions to the United States Navy for access to F-14 Tomcats, aircraft carriers, and Miramar itself. Every take burned fuel worth thousands of dollars per hour. Real pilots flew real maneuvers at real speed. That authenticity changed everything. The weight of those jets in the sky gave the film credibility no model work could match. But it also meant the Navy had influence. Scripts were reviewed, details were adjusted. The military wasn't background, it was collaborator, and that collaboration reshaped how America viewed naval aviation. Less than a decade after Vietnam, this film helped polish the image of the armed forces in under 2 hours. It didn't feel like propaganda, it felt aspirational, and that subtle shift would echo far beyond the box office. 3. The enemy jet never existed. The MiG-28, the sleek black menace that haunted Maverick's radar, was pure invention. In reality, the aircraft were American-made F-5S, painted with red stars. No Soviet MiG carried that designation. Aviation enthusiasts spotted the fictional numbering instantly, but the ambiguity was deliberate. By never naming a country, the film avoided dating itself to a specific political flashpoint. The conflict became symbolic skill against skill, nerve against nerve. That decision preserved the movie's longevity. Decades later, the aerial battles still feel immediate because they aren't tied to a single headline from 1986. The opponent becomes abstract tension rather than geopolitical commentary, and that abstraction gives the dogfights a timeless quality that keeps them relevant long after the Cold War ended. 4. The inverted shot is physically impossible. That iconic moment, Maverick rolling inverted above the enemy jet and flashing a defiant gesture, shouldn't work in real aerodynamics. The F-14's tail configuration and fuel feed system wouldn't allow sustained inverted proximity like that without catastrophic risk. Real naval aviators have admitted they laugh at the geometry, yet the shot remains unforgettable. Why? Because cinema trades in emotional truth, not engineering manuals. The scene was composited using practical flight footage and optical effects, creating an image more mythic than mechanical. It wasn't about physics, it was about swagger. That single visual distilled Maverick's identity in seconds. And sometimes, one impossible image can define a generation's understanding of courage and rebellion more than a perfectly accurate one ever could. 5. The cockpit sweat was manufactured. The most intense close-ups weren't filmed in the sky at all. Dialogue inside real jets was unusable, so the production built a full cockpit replica mounted on a gimbal in a hangar. Crew members sprayed actors with water to simulate sweat under G-force. Lighting mimicked altitude glare. It was controlled illusion layered over authentic flight footage. That combination made the performances readable while preserving realism. Without it, the emotional arc would have been lost in engine noise. Instead, we see fear, doubt, rivalry, grief. Expressions clear enough to anchor the spectacle. The balance between authenticity and artifice is why the film still feels immersive rather than dated. 6. Val Kilmer's reluctance made Iceman dangerous. Val Kilmer didn't initially want the role of Iceman. He considered the script simplistic and only auditioned due to contractual obligations. That resistance bled into the character. Instead of cartoon rivalry, Kilmer delivered disciplined restraint. His stillness contrasts sharply with Tom Cruise's volatility. Off-screen tension sharpened on-screen chemistry. Iceman became the embodiment of controlled excellence, a reminder that confidence doesn't always shout. The dynamic elevated the film beyond one-note bravado. It framed Maverick's recklessness against professionalism, and that balance is why the rivalry feels authentic decades later. Number 7. The soundtrack almost didn't happen. Danger Zone was rejected by multiple artists before Kenny Loggins recorded it. Take My Breath Away sparked disagreement within Berlin before becoming an Oscar winner. Both songs could have disappeared into obscurity. Instead, they fused with imagery so seamlessly that the music became inseparable from the film. The soundtrack dominated 1986, embedding itself in American culture. When the opening guitar riff hits, the runway lights return instantly in memory. The film didn't just use music, it weaponized it. Sound became adrenaline. Ballads became longing. The audio identity cemented the visual myth. 8. The volleyball scene redefined military masculinity. On paper, the beach volleyball montage advances nothing. In execution, it humanizes everything. Sunlight, sweat, laughter, rivalry without uniforms. It allows the pilots to exist as young men rather than symbols. That tonal shift makes the later tragedy more painful. The scene also broadened the film's appeal beyond its target demographic, inviting female audiences into the spectacle. What some executives dismissed as indulgence became cultural shorthand for 1980s cool. It proved vulnerability and competition could coexist on screen without diminishing strength. 9. Ray-Ban's resurrection was instant. Before Top Gun, aviator sunglasses were fading from fashion relevance. After Maverick wore them, sales surged dramatically. The frames weren't costume pieces, they were artifacts with aviation heritage. When Maverick slid them on, he didn't just block sunlight, he completed a silhouette. Consumers followed. The film revived a brand by aligning identity with image. It demonstrated how cinema can redefine cultural style overnight. 10. The sequel proved legacy can evolve. 36 years later, Top Gun: Maverick achieved critical acclaim that surpassed the original and earned 6 Academy Award nominations. It embraced aging, mentorship, and mortality, without sacrificing spectacle. That evolution validated the emotional core introduced in 1986. Maverick wasn't frozen in nostalgia, he matured. The sequel showed that legacy stories resonate most when they acknowledge time rather than deny it. Taken together, these truths reveal something deeper than trivia. Top Gun endures because it balanced risk and restraint, authenticity and illusion, spectacle and vulnerability. It respected danger without glorifying recklessness. It turned rivalry into growth. It transformed national image through character-driven myth. For audiences who lived through its release, the film isn't just memory. It's a reminder that cultural turning points often arrive disguised as entertainment. The jets fade from the screen, but the lessons remain. Confidence must be earned. Image shapes perception, and courage without humility eventually collides with consequence. When you strip away the afterburners, the sunglasses, the slow-motion salutes, and the thunder of Danger Zone, what remains is something far more enduring than an action movie. Top Gun became a cultural pivot point because it understood that spectacle alone fades, but identity lasts. It showed a generation that confidence, without discipline, leads to loss, that rivalry can sharpen character rather than destroy it, and that growth often arrives through failure, not applause. For audiences who first saw it in packed theaters in the mid-80s, the film didn't just entertain it, recalibrated how America saw its military, its heroes, and even its own sense of swagger. Its legacy isn't just measured in box office numbers or soundtrack sales. It lives in the way it blended authenticity with myth, in how it honored real risk while crafting cinematic legend, and in how it returned decades later with Top Gun: Maverick to prove that maturity can be just as compelling as youthful bravado. That arc, reckless talent evolving into earned wisdom, is the true through line. If this deep dive brought back memories or revealed something new about a film you thought you knew by heart, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Like the video, share it with someone who still quotes Maverick, and drop a comment about which moment still gives you chills. Because some movies don't just fly, they stay airborne for generations.